back to the old story, which I said, let's park it for the moment, but supply and demand. Until we somehow, in this country, which is, we're very special in this regard relative to other places in the world, we got 68% or something of our population lives in 3 major cities in one on the coastline, and we don't build anywhere else for a whole lot of reasons, infrastructure costs and remoteness, et cetera, and the what the land is like and all that sort of stuff, whole series of reasons. But until we can meet the demand, and by the way, you just said the population growth is going to kick up soon because more people are going to start emigrating to Australia. Until supply can meet the demand, then house prices will continue to rise. And it's always been the case in this country.
Indeed. And in fact, from the budget papers, this is something that I read through the budget papers, or not every page, but I read through a large number of them. One thing that didn't get a lot of coverage over the discussion of the budget was that the government, said that immigration is going to increase to 235,000 people per annum. During the lockdowns, during COVID, it was actually negative. We had a few more people leaving than coming in. So that was a really interesting thing. And that actually feeds into why the unemployment rate's low, because we couldn't get these international workers coming to work in Australia. But now that the borders are opening, and it'll take a bit of time. They're not going to open and everybody's going to come rushing in tomorrow. No, it'll take a little bit of time before we're all confident about COVID-related issues and the like. But the Treasury, the government, and this is not even a Labor-Liberal issue, this is just what is. There's going to be 235,000 people per annum from immigration from next year coming into Australia. And we also know that Australians have more births than deaths, so the natural increase in Australia's population's about 75,000 a year, something around about that sort of level. So from next year, we're going to have 300,000 additional people in Australia every year. So unless we're building a lot of houses, the existing stock of housing will be met with more demand. And so that's another reason to sort of put a bit of a damp squib on the doomsayers. They're saying, prices are going to be dropping 10 and 20% over the next couple of years.
And if you look at, and if people are trying to say, well, how do I work all this stuff out? I mean, the supply piece, you can look at new approvals, you can look at new construction commencement, but if you look at new construction completion, you'll notice something very interesting. Now, what have you noticed about new construction completion? Approvals are on their way up.
Yes.
Construction starts of houses, dwellings, and we're talking about apartments and houses, are up. But new house completions?
Well, a couple of things. Just because you've got a house approved doesn't mean you build it, and you might sit on it for years.
It's a good stat, but
it's an important indicator of the economy. No question, it's important. So there is a bit of a fallout. The other thing is, how long does it take you from getting, I've got my approval to build my house on this bit of land, or build this apartment tower on this block.
As well as developers, by the way, Steve.
Indeed.
Not just you as an individual.
Correct. All of the above. It's taking longer to get it completed.
Why?
We've got a labour skills shortage.
And we've got a supply chain problem too.
Correct.
No timber.
I was going to say timber, all the raw materials that go to make a house, timber, cement, concrete, wire.
Steel.
All those things that go to make a house, as well as the workers who are busy, by the way, building infrastructure. Look, I'm a big fan of infrastructure for the Australian economy. I love it. However, there's a very big overlap of the type of people who work in infrastructure and work in dwelling construction. And we've got a skill shortage of plumbers, sparkies, bricklayers, concrete sort of truck drivers and all the rest of it. And there's a couple of consequences of that. It takes longer for your building approval that you get from your local council until you actually have a place with a key, you can walk in, and I'm living in my house. It's taken close to 2 years now. In years gone by, it took about a year. Now, they're averages, of course, but so it's taking double the time. So that supply of dwellings coming onto the market is slower now than it used to be.
So I'll conclude with one thing then. If the demand for dwellings is going to increase it by about 350,000 as immigration kicks up, like as has been announced, and given our net births versus our deaths, and it takes longer, the lead time to get a house complete, in other words, the supply of new dwellings is much longer than before, then if those two part company in terms of not following each other, then I can only expect one thing alone, and that's a higher house price.
It certainly puts upward momentum into house prices. The supply and demand are really important. And if I can just finish on one little thing.
Yeah.
I was looking at Tasmania. You know, I think, why is Stephen looking at Tasmania? Because Tassie, Hobart, Launceston have had some of the strongest increases in house prices over the last decade, not just the last year, but over the last decade. And you think, what's going on in Tassie? You look at the population numbers, they've actually been quite weak. And you think, well, gee, where's all this coming from? It's because they've had a very weak construction side. So while population in Tasmania has gone up about 10% over the last decade, the number of new houses has only gone up 10% as well. Whereas we look at, say, Canberra, it's had a 20% increase in population. You think, oh, wow, that's going to be booming. But we've had a 30% increase in the number of houses. So Canberra, while it's doing well, don't get me wrong, has not had the same price momentum as Tasmania. And so that says to me that supply and demand matters. And if you've got weak construction, that puts a floor under prices, even with modest growth in population. So that's a critical thing that I look at when I'm trying to work out not what house price is going to do next month or next year, but over a medium term. And again, who buys a house for a 1 year time horizon? We buy it for years. It's a long-term investment. You look at those demographics and that feeds into your discussion about what the risks are to house prices. And after a flat 2022-ish, possibly, modest, because of rate hikes, any long run look at Australian house prices, it's always a time to buy is what I say. Gets me into trouble sometimes from some of the other doomsayers. But, if you've got a 5, 10, 15-year view on a house, you'll do fine. You'll do better than fine.
So, what I'm reading for today, and by the way, things change over months, but what I'm reading today into this conversation is maybe now's the time to start doing your research. If you're just trying to buy an investment property, maybe start to think about a place like, Tasmania, but start to do your research into the demand and supply, like the sort of stuff you're talking about. What's the population growth look like? What's the new housing completions look like? Are they keeping pace with each other? Where's the pressure going to come? Maybe I can buy something now and, because of the pressure over time, I'll make a better return than I would ordinarily get if I just bought something in somewhere around the corner from myself. As usual, Stephen Koukoulas, fascinating. Great coverage. Thanks very much, mate.
Thanks, Mark. Terrific.